Okay, so when we last chatted, we talked about the Battle of Sullivan's Island. And if you remember, the Battle of Sullivan's Island was a big deal because the Patriots won, right? And they sent the British packing back up north. And it's now 1780, so several years later, and the British have realized we cannot win unless we take these southern colonies. So we've got to take over Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina and Virginia. And the reason for that is that there were a lot of patriots in these colonies, a lot of them. And so the war just wasn't winnable for the British unless they came south. So this says North Charleston, but they're gonna reflect their minds on Charleston, South Carolina. And of course, we're right outside of Charleston. And remember, I told you that the attack on Fort Moultrie was a failure. So they're not going to repeat that. So they're going to have to come up with something else to do that will help them take over. And their plan, if you look up here in the upper left-hand corner, is a siege. Okay, a siege. And I want you to think in your mind, what do you think a siege is? And maybe your teacher will pause it for a second and allow you guys to talk about what you think a siege is. Okay, so a siege. A siege is literally day after hour of the enemy shooting cannonballs into the city. Now, it's not just on one side either, okay? They're going to totally surround you. So if you think about this, what the British had to do before they could totally surround Charleston was they had to come in through Georgia, and they came in up through Georgia, took over Savannah, and kind of marched up, and then they came behind Charleston and surrounded it. It was, once you got outside of that downtown Charleston area, it was very rural. There really wasn't a Somerville, there really wasn't a Big Goose Creek, there wasn't North Charleston. So they were able to easily sneak in from behind once they had taken over the colony of Georgia. And they're going to surround Charleston from this way, and then their navy is going to surround the port. Okay, and they're going to constantly bombard the city. But here's the thing about a siege: no one can get in, and no one can get out. If nothing can get into the city of Charleston, what are they going to start to run out of? Supplies, right? They're going to start to run out of all those supplies that they need to survive. So this is going to become a huge problem. So like we said, the British surround by sea and land. Here's a good picture. Charleston, of course, is a peninsula. It doesn't look like one when you look at a map of South Carolina, but Charleston is a peninsula surrounded by the Ashley River and the Cooper River. This is Mount Pleasant over here, and this is James Island. And so again, those British come in, they surround with their ships, and then the soldiers come up from Georgia and they kind of cut off this area. So literally, no one could get in or out, okay? The city was bombed constantly. No food or other supplies could get in. And eventually what happens, I don't know about you, but I want you to think about if we were under siege in our school, okay? So we cannot get out of our school and no supplies can get in. And they're bombing us. Now, we might find a safe place where the cannons can't reach, right? Because these aren't like this is not like today's war where they had planes flying overhead. There were no planes. So we might find a place in the center of our school, let's say even the library, where the cannons can't reach. And so we're here, and it's okay the first few days. It's a little bit scary and we can hear things being destroyed, but we have a stock of food in the cafeteria, right, guys? So we have food, but then that food starts to run out. And we're now on 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months of hearing nothing but cannon fire all the time. And we need medicine and we need food, and people are getting sick and people are starving to death. And eventually what happens is you give up, you surrender. And that's what happened. The Patriots were starving, they were exhausted, and they finally surrendered the city to the British. Now, in the last one with the Battle of Sullivan's Island, I told you Charleston was one of the richest cities in the world. So when Charleston surrenders, it's a huge loss for the Patriots. At this moment, and I still get chills thinking about it, at this moment, this is where the Patriots really had to stop and think. There's a chance we might not win this war. And there's a chance that we could have to continue to be British colonies and have to pay their taxes. Okay, so this is not a good moment for the patriots and the rebels. So the British have taken over the city of Charleston, and that's where we're going to end this lesson. It's a sad, sad way to end, guys, but it's what happened.